Okay, I just got done binging Narcos Mexico season 3, so now I've watched all of Narcos Mexico in its entirety, but I watched the previous two seasons prior to starting this channel, so I will talk a little bit about that, but this is primarily going to be about season 3. Now, overall, I'd say Narcos Mexico is a very good show. I much preferred the previous two seasons, seasons 1 and 2. They revolved around the Guadalajara cartel and one primary character, Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, who was the mob boss or the cartel boss for the Guadalajara cartel. That was a far more compelling story than what they tried to do in season 3.
I'm disappointed. I am.
In season 3, it just tries to focus way too much on like too many parties, like too many organizations. They focus on the Tijuana cartel, they focus on the Juarez cartel, the Sinaloa cartel, and then you also have the press, you have the DEA, and then now they added a cop who isn't really relevant to the story that we've been told the previous two seasons. He's just a cop who does his job in Juarez only if he's being paid for it. But then he got asked to look for the daughter of a mother, and he slowly just becomes obsessed with that and to find the killer not only of her but of multiple young women in Juarez. The show would have done a lot better. I mean, the season would have been a lot better if they tried to focus on one guy or at least one organization. Like if it focused on the Juarez cartel and Amado Carrillo Fuentes, or the Tijuana cartel or Sinaloa, that would have been fine. I mean, me personally, I would prefer if they would have scrapped or put less focus on the Sinaloa cartel, because Chapo's in jail from 1993 until 2001. So unless you're gonna have a prison show about Chapo, I mean, you can't really do much with him because the Sinaloa cartel was weak then, and the rising star, the rising narco, was Amado Carrillo Fuentes. At the end of season 2, my favorite scene in all of Narcos, whether it's this one or the original Narcos, Walt Breslin goes back to talk to Miguel, and he basically breaks down everything that's going to come. War is going to come to Mexico because now that he's gone, he's the guy that kept everybody in check, and now that he's gone, Tijuana and Sinaloa are going to be at each other's necks, and while that's happening, Amado Carrillo Fuentes is going to grow more powerful in Juarez, and that is exactly what happened, exactly like Miguel said. The problem was that because you focus on too many parties at once, and now you're focusing on the press and the DEA, who didn't really do jack shit this entire season, and Victor Tapia, that's just too many stories being told. We were led to believe that this season would have been a war, and there was some violence, but it was a very anticlimactic ending. Like, the season overall was very anticlimactic because you don't get to see that war. You don't get to see the violence, the repercussions of what they did by arresting Miguel. He said, hey, you arrested me, I was the only one holding them at bay, and now that I'm gone, they're all going to be at each other's necks, and you guys are going to have a bloodbath. But no, the pacing is very slow, the build-up is very slow, and just when it starts to pick up a little traction, it just jumps to another party. It'll jump to Tijuana, and then when you start focusing on Tijuana, out of nowhere, it'll just jump right back to Victor Tapia, and then right back to the press, and then right back to the DEA. So like, you never really get to get invested too much in any individual story. It's just a bunch of things going on at once. There's no central story being told here. In my personal opinion, I think it would have been better if they focused on either Juarez or Tijuana. Now, Tijuana, you would have Benjamin, and he wasn't necessarily a likable character, but when you see him with his family, given that his daughter was sick, and that's a very relatable story that you can connect with his character, kind of like Pablo Escobar. He was evil, he was a narco terrorist, but then you'd see him with his family, and you'd see another side of that guy. And by the end of the show, you kind of felt sorry for him. So they could have done something like that with Benjamin, and how he was on top, and now like he has no choice but to worry about the safety of his family. So that could have been very compelling. And then Amado Carrillo Fuentes could have just been like the rival or something. He could have been to Benjamin what Pacho Herrera was to Miguel, because Miguel, he was very confident, he was a very smart man, but whenever he was in the presence of Pacho or Pablo Escobar, I mean mainly Pacho because that's the one you see the most, it's like he was so nervous, he was always so scared, like he was like this confident man was gone, and you can see it every single time. And I think Diego Luna did a very good job at showing us that, how nervous he was whenever he was in the presence of a Colombian narco, specifically Pacho Herrera. And I'm really glad they brought him in for this season 2. I mean, I figured he would be, but he's my favorite character from the Cali cartel. And I don't know, like every time that Pacho Herrera is on screen, he just gives like this shit just got real vibe every single time you see him. Like in season 2, episode 1 of Narcos Mexico, it's Miguel's birthday party and he's waiting to talk to this guy. And then I think as they're singing happy birthday or whatever, then the camera slowly shifts to Pacho Herrera as he makes his entrance at Miguel's birthday party, and you already know.
This shit just got rigged.
But yeah, anyway, they could have focused on Tijuana or Juarez, either one, it didn't really matter, but they should have had less focus on Sinaloa because you can't really do much with Chapo. I mean, I understand that a lot of people wanted Chapo to be the main guy, they wanted to see his rise. There is a show called Chapo. If you want to see that, go for it, but this show is called Narcos, and having it centered around Chapo just wouldn't work in that time period. They should have focused less on Chapo and less on Sinaloa and focused more on the other two cartels. They also could have scrapped the DEA because they didn't do jack shit this season. Like, they didn't need to be in this season. Honestly, I think it would have been very refreshing to just have Andrea, I think that was her name, the reporter, the journalist from La Voz. I think it would have been very refreshing to have her as the investigator in the show, because it's different to have the truth put out there. Like, she goes to wherever the dirt is. She goes and investigates to find dirt on any dirty politician or any story on the cartel leaders or cartel members, like whatever, and then they post it because La Voz isn't afraid to post the truth, and that's their whole thing. But that also puts a target on their back, so that would have been very refreshing to see instead of the DEA, who didn't really do anything. And Walt Breslin is a fictional character, if I'm not mistaken, so they could have just done anything with him. They could have done anything else but what he was doing this entire season, which was nothing. Or they could have had him be more of a recurring character and just talk to Andrea so she has an article to put out based on the information that he gives, or like, or whatever. He's a fictional character, so they could have done whatever with him. And then there's Victor Tapia. Don't get me wrong, I really love the story. I think it was very interesting that you just have this guy who seems to be very apathetic to all the issues in Juarez. He doesn't do anything in Juarez. He doesn't do his job as a cop unless he's being paid for the privilege. But then for whatever reason, he becomes obsessed with finding this girl. I don't know if they ever I don't remember if they ever stated why he's so obsessed with it, but it's kind of similar to Robert Graysmith. I'm not entirely sure if that was his name, the guy from Zodiac, how he becomes obsessed with finding the real Zodiac killer.
Do you remember the Zodiac?
It's very similar to that. He just becomes so obsessed to the point where it's putting a strain on his marriage and his friendship with his partner, and he just goes out late at night and just stakes out this bus stop trying to see who is picking up these young women and killing them. And I have no idea who the actor's name is, but he did a really good job at showing us how that obsession was kind of tearing him apart, like not being able to fix this issue. And then in the end, he couldn't fix the issue because he was so confident that he had killed the man that had been abducting these women and just dumping their bodies. And then he finds out that that's not true, that there are multiple killers and that he can't do anything about it. And the look on his face is just, it was just such great acting. And then unfortunately his character died, but I mean, I saw that coming. So I mean, it was a very interesting story and I loved it. It was actually my favorite part, and he was my favorite character of the entire season, but it just isn't relevant to the other stories being told. So unless you're gonna put less focus on all these other like cartels, don't put this in there, don't put this into play when you already have all these stories to tell. This season was supposed to be a war, and you couldn't focus on that because you were focusing on too much at once. This season was supposed to be very climactic, and you're supposed to be telling a war between all the competing cartels, but now you're introducing new characters on top of that, and there just isn't room for it, especially when it has no relevance to that story whatsoever. But yeah, season 3 was a very big disappointment. Overall, Narcos Mexico was a very, very good show, but this season was extremely disappointing and did not meet expectations. It did not live up to that last scene at the end of season 2. But regardless, the acting was great. They brought these characters to life. I mean, I don't know how realistic their depiction of these characters are, because I don't know too much about that, but they brought them to life in my eyes. Like, they made me believe that they were those characters. So fantastic job to all the actors and whoever was directing. I think Wagner Mora, I think that's how you say his name, the guy who played Pablo Escobar, I think he directed an episode or two on this season, so that was actually pretty interesting. But yeah, fantastic job to all of them. I really enjoyed watching the show, but this season was just a very bad, horribly organized mess. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section. How do you feel about the show, specifically this season? Because I did not like it at all. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already, and I will catch you in the next video next Friday. See you then. Bye bye.